Hello and welcome to the 10th annual EMCON Animefest. This is your host Mark Torres speaking. We are here on Zoom, live on tape, with none other than super awesome guy and amazing voice actor, Larry Kenney.
Oh, stop.
Yay!
He's right. Thank you.
So let's just let everybody know there is a chat function on the screen. So if you guys have any questions, type in your questions and we will read them off as we go. Other than that, I will just be asking Larry some questions as we move forward. So let's start off with the easy one, Larry.
Oh, yes, please.
When you were young Larry.
Excuse me?
When you were young Larry.
You mean younger?
Yes, when you were younger, Larry, a child, a youngin, did you think that you wanted to be a voice actor? What were you watching? What were you doing that said, hey, I want to do that?
Well, actually, yeah, when I was a little kid. In fact, my mother tells me from the time I could speak, she's exaggerating, of course, but I was doing character voices and cartoon voices that I would see on the air, you know, impressions of famous people on the Tonight Show and stuff like that. So without realizing that it's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I knew right away I enjoyed doing funny voices, making people laugh, you know. I discovered early on that if you could make especially the girls laugh, girls love to laugh, you know, and so it worked out pretty good.
So you did it for the women, always for the women.
Yeah, and then later the money.
Actually, speaking of later in the money, your daughter is also a famous voice actor and everything. So is it because it's such a great profession, you're like, you do it too? Or were you like, no, don't get into the business?
Well, she wanted to be, my daughter's Kenney Silver. And she has a great career going, as you mentioned. She's got very well known. When she was small, when she was about 10 or 11, I think, I used to take her with me, as I did with all my kids, to auditions and recording sessions and things like that. And they loved the business. You know, you could see the behind the mic and behind the camera side of the business. And they loved the business. And she once asked me if she could start going on auditions when she was about 10 or 11. She saw one of the auditions I went to, there happened to be in the next studio over, they were auditioning kids about her age for a movie or something like that. And that's where she got the idea. From then on, she kept asking me, Daddy, can I try it? Can I, you know? And I didn't want to tell her, no, you can't, you know, but I really rather she didn't. I'd rather she just be a child first, go to school, be in school plays, you know, and take speech classes and things like that. But live your childhood, because I've seen a lot of people who started out as child actors, and most of them are fine, but you've seen some stories, I'm sure, about the things that they can get into, you know, all that money and stuff like that. But so I did say to her, let's do this. She loved my agent, Don Buchwald. And we used to go to his house all the time. He came to ours. And I said, we called him Uncle Don. I said, let's ask Uncle Don. And if Don Buchwald says, you know, whatever advice he gives you, that's what I would do. And I didn't tell Don I was going to do it. I didn't prepare him for it. We took him to see her. He sat her down. I was out in the lobby. She came out and she says, well, Uncle Don says, and I'm going to do that. He says I should stay in school and, you know, do all the childhood things and have my fun and everything, take speech classes. And I'm going, yes, what else did he say? He told her everything I told her. She followed his advice, and now she's got a great career. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
So when did you start doing voiceover professionally? So you were a kid, you did the kid stuff. At what spry age did you decide when you started actually being professional voice acting?
Well, I started my career in radio. I was a disc jockey when I was 15, back in Illinois, Peoria, Illinois. And it was a disc jockey. I was a disc jockey, you know, playing records. It's not like today's DJs where you're playing them for people to dance to. You know, it was on the radio, disc jockey. And I started doing that, and I started using those little voices that I used to use in school and everything on the air in my show. I incorporated those and impressions of famous people and things like that. So technically I was using that professionally when I was 15, but it wasn't until I got to Cleveland, I think, where there was a lot of commercial work to do, commercials and movie trailers and things like that, that I really got into using my voice and different voices on commercials per se. So that was about 1970, I guess.
Wow. So what was the music you played? Was it your music that you played, or was it the radio station that said you have to play this music?
It was what we called back then a top 40 station. You played the top 40 hits of the day over and over and over with a few oldies thrown in, you know. But it was pop. It was what you'd call today pop music. We played, well, I started in 1963. So the Beatles were just starting. We played the Beatles, you know, and we didn't play the Rolling Stones because they were too wild. They were too far. Yeah, I remember that. And they wouldn't let us play James Brown.
Wow.
That's bad for the kids, you know, that music. But we played all the top hits of the day.
If you were to be a disc jockey now, what would your music choice be? Or would you be like Casey Kasem with the oldies? He used to have the countdown every week.
Counting down the top 100 hits. Casey Kasem. I used to listen to him all the time. If I were doing it today, it's been so long since I did radio, and I did it for years and years. I just stopped doing radio actually in 2008. I was on the Imus in the Morning Show for 35 years. I wasn't a disc jockey. I was doing, you know, character voices and things like that on his radio and TV shows. But what was your question again? I'm sorry.
What music would you be playing now if you were a disc jockey?
You know what? Strangely enough, probably country, because I developed a love for country music. Where I'm from, most people listen to country. Anyway, our parents did, you know, country music. Back in the days when it was Hank Williams and, you know, Tennessee Ernie Ford and people like that. And I never cared for it when I was in high school. I always called it that hillbilly music, like a lot of people do. But when I got older and started listening to it, I fell in love with it. And to this day, if I want to sit down and listen to some good music, it's usually country music. If I'm in the car and I want to listen to music, it's usually country music. So that's probably what I would play on the air if I were doing it.
That's cool. So then you moved on. You did some commercial. You did mascots. You took over for two huge mascots, right? Count Chocula and Cuckoo the Cocoa Bird.
Yeah, Sonny
the Cocoa Bird.
Up here, I won't go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Yahoo! I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
So
been doing that for 40 years.
Wow. So when you take over a role for somebody, like, do you do your best to try to emulate what's there? You try to make it your own? In
those two cases, Count Chocula and Sonny the Cocoa Puffs bird, they wanted us to get as close as possible to the voice that had been on the air already. Chuck McCann had been doing Cocoa Puffs since I was a kid.
Wow.
He left to go to California from New York to do movies and TV shows. So they called us in, a couple hundred people, for auditions over a few days. And the first thing they told us was, we don't want a new voice, because the kids everybody's, you know, so familiar with Sonny, and he is such a popular character that we want you to keep that going. So I got that because I could sound closest to Chuck McCann. And pretty much the same thing with Count Chocula. A guy named Jim Dukas had been doing it for 100 years, and he was retiring. So they wanted us to come as close to his voice as we could.
Were you required to eat the cereal and like the cereal?
No, we weren't required to, and I didn't.
Like, you know, sometimes they have, if you're a product placement, so whenever you're walking around town, you have to have a box of Cocoa Puffs with you at all times. You can't be caught with a picture of Lucky Charms or anything.
No, you couldn't be caught dead with a box of Lucky Charms. Lucky Charms wouldn't have been that bad because it's General Mills, the same company.
Right.
Yeah. Or Frankenberry, you know.
Do you ever get together and have a cereal talk?
Cereal talk?
Yeah, just have all the cereal guys just get together and just start talking and having a ball.
Well, yeah, we used to. Our business has changed an awful lot, the voiceover business. Used to see people all day long, you know, here in New York. You'd go from one recording studio to an ad agency to audition for something else, and you go back to another recording studio, you know, to record something. And of course, all along the way in between the studios were all in Midtown Manhattan up until about 20 years ago. So we'd constantly see each other on the street, you know, and it's a very small population, voiceover actors. There aren't that many of us, and we like to keep it that way. So you see them on the street corners, and you go to lunch with different voiceover actors and things like that. Now you can't very well do that because they record us all individually. They don't put like on Thundercats, all 6 of us were always in the studio together when we recorded. We did everything as one unit. Now, if we were doing it now, well, we just did a new one, a new Thundercats Roar. And you go in, you're one person in the booth at a time, and then the next day they'll bring somebody else in. But you record all by yourself. And it's not that much fun anymore for me. I enjoy being with the other actors and working off of them, you know, bouncing things back and forth. I think you're more creative that way and do a better job. But
I totally agree. Like it's a lost art because in my mind anyway, I mean, you were there. It's more like a play when you guys are interacting and playing off of each other than just reading a script. Mm-hmm. I find that you're losing something. I can't specifically put my finger on what you're losing, but it feels like you're losing out on something.
Yeah, I can't name it either, but any actor will tell you that to be all alone, especially when you're only doing the voice, you know, and you're not on camera where you can do a lot of crazy things or whatever. When it's only your voice, you really need something to kind of bounce off of. It's helpful anyway to me, but you know, you do what you have to do.
So speaking of Thundercats, you did 2 voices. I was told that each actor did 2 voices, one good and one bad guy, right?
We did each of us did one Thundercat and one mutant. And then beyond that, we were the voices of all the hundreds of characters. We all did many, many characters on Thundercats, Silverhawks, Tiger Sharks, Karate Cat, all those shows for Rankin Bass.
So when you do more than one voice in a recording, do you find it easier to play off yourself, or you do one voice first and then you do the other voice?
I like to do it what I call real time. If Jackalman is talking with Lionel, and pardon me, I can't do either one of them very well right now. My voice is raspy. But I like to do it, let's say if there was a dialogue, a scene where Lionel and Jackalman are talking to each other. Most actors prefer to record all of Lionel's lines and then all of Jackalman's lines and let them splice it together. For whatever reason, I find it more of a challenge and more fun to do it like, so, Jackalman, where's that evil Mumra?
That's for me to know and you to find out, Mum.
Lionel, I can't keep it straight. But that's what I mean, back and forth. Maybe that's why the other actors don't do it that way. I never thought of that. But it's more fun for me that way.
So we have a question in the chat. Just a reminder, there is a chat function in the thing. You just type in your question and I will read it. Okay. It is from Pat Drennan. It says, do you mind the new art style they did for the remake Thundercats because the old artwork is so much better? So did you actually get to look at the old style and see the new style, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've been on all 3 Thundercats series. The original with Lionel in the original series back in '85. In 2011, we did a new series for Warner Brothers, and I played Lionel's father, Claudius, in that one. And in the new one, Thundercats Roar, I'm playing Jaga, which is kind of strange, but that's who they got me playing. The new one, I know there's a lot of talk, good and bad, about Thundercats Roar on the internet, and a lot of fans of the original show, or the original and the 2011 show, don't like it. They don't like the animation. They don't like the fact that it's so different from the original Thundercats. I understand that, and I understand that some people are never going to like it. That's fine. This is for a whole new generation. This new Thundercats Roar is for very small kids, 4, 5, 6 years old, really. If you haven't seen it yet, it's kind of in line with Teen Titans Go, you know that show. It's the same kind of animation. And goofiness. It's more of a kind of a goofy, silly thing. But as I tell the fans who say they don't like the new one, or why they do it, I tell them, you know, you've always got the original. You got the original one and the 2011 one. They're on DVD. They're on YouTube. You'll always be able to watch those. This is for a new generation. Apparently, they think maybe this new generation, and I think they might be right, likes more bang, 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 and lots more movement, you know, than back in the old days. Who knows?
So I was a fan of the original series. I
Good.
saw the second series, not as much, and I saw a couple episodes of the new one, and I thought just the new one was hilarious. Like, I thought it was funny for me. And I'm like, why is everybody so mad? But I thought it was just funny.
Yeah.
So when it's funny how you're making each one of your roles is getting older and older and older.
Well, yes, isn't it funny?
So when they approached you for this, did you read the scripts or did you just say, it's Thundercats, I'm in?
No, I read a couple of scripts because I'm very protective of the legacy of Thundercats and all the shows I've been on, but especially Thundercats, because over the years, people have written me so many times about when they were kids. Some of them tell me to a certain degree of detail. Well, what I'm trying to say is people have told me they did not have good childhoods for whatever reason. And, you know, you can imagine what they're probably talking about. They were abused or, you know, poor, hungry, I don't know. But so many of them have told me it was not an easy life for them. But when they went into the room and watched Thundercats for that half hour, it just took all that stuff away from them. And that touches me, and that's very important to me, that not to do anything that's going to denigrate that legacy, you know.
So when you were doing this back then, did you realize what kind of impact would you have in future generations?
There's never any way you can tell in the entertainment business if you're doing a movie or a play or TV show, anything like that, until the public sees it. We knew with Thundercats especially right away that we had great writing. The scripts were great. The animation was fantastic. Had fantastic music. I mean, there's been nothing like that. Thundercats, you know, Thundercats roar, or hear the roar, feel the magic, hear the roar. So everything about it was great. You could tell it was great. The actors were all top-notch New York actors. So we knew we had a good product, but that doesn't always mean it's going to be a hit. I mean, the public is a fickle thing. If they don't like it, it's not a hit. So, but like I said, we always thought it, from the very beginning, we thought this has got a chance. This could be really big.
So it's animation. So you come and you do the voices first, then they do the animation to the voices, and then it airs. So how long is it from start to finish when you get a project?
Well, that's,
on average.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say because when you first begin, like when we first began Thundercats, they had already written 13 episodes, which is what you have to do. If you're going to do a television show and sell it to a network, you've got to bring them 13 completed episodes. Once it gets past the first few meetings with the network, you know, when they finally say, okay, we like it, let's do 13. If that doesn't work, they just cancel it. Or if it does work, they do another 13 and another 13. So the point is, at the very beginning, when we got to go ahead from ABC to do the show, we did 13 episodes. They were already written. So we would do like a couple a week, you know, and got holes done, and then it was renewed for another period. Now you've got to take a break and allow the animators a chance to animate what you've already recorded, allow the writers to come up with and write new scripts, and then get back together and record those. So after the first few months, we only worked 2 days a month, a Thursday and a Friday. Let's say the last Thursday and Friday of the month. And we would do 2 shows each day. We would record 4 shows a month. That gives you an idea of what I'm talking about, how long it takes them to animate them and get the new ones written and everything. So it took us about 3 years to record 130 episodes of Thundercats.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, that's only working a couple of days a month, you know.
Right. So whenever you're going for auditions, it could be months, years before they say, hey, we want you to come back and let's do this, and it's a thing, right?
Usually, no, not usually. You mean once a project has started and they hire you, then it's a long time before it starts recording? Is that what you mean?
I mean, so let's say you go for an audition and you don't know if you got the part. It could be an extended amount of time between from when you go for the audition to when you're like, I got the job. And then when you got the job, it's still some time off before it actually appears on TV or whatever it is.
Yeah. Sure. By the time it's produced and everything and packaged and sent out, you know, it can take a long time. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me if the very beginning part, once you auditioned, is it a long time before you know you got the job? No, it's not. It's always within a week or so.
Oh, okay.
Once you've auditioned. Now they might tell you we're not going to start recording for another 2 months or whatever, but they'll let you know you have the job. They have to because, you know, the way we make our living as actors is you win a job, you get it, and then you go out and try to find another job because, you know, you're not getting paid on a weekly basis. You're getting paid for whatever you're doing. And sometimes it's quite a while between jobs, you know.
Speaking of which, William Shatner, at a convention I was at, he once said that somebody had asked him if he was embarrassed about any of the jobs that he took during his career. And he said, you have to realize that for an actor, if you're not working, if you're not on a project, you're not making any money until the next project comes along.
That's right.
So certain times you have to, you know, he's like, some of those movies I did put my kids through college. It put food on the table. So I'm not embarrassed about that.
Right. That's right. And also when you're starting out the business, you know, when you're not William Shatner, you're, you know, Bill, you're next to audition, whoever Bill is, you know. Once you're well known, of course, it's much easier. But yeah, at first you have to get used to the rejection. And then hopefully it gets to the point where you're not getting rejected all the time and you're getting a few jobs and then hopefully a few more and a few more. You know, it's a tough business. It really is.
And do you find it easier the further you go along because now you already have work already built upon, so then people already know, okay, this is what he is, this is what he does? Or do you find it to be, it doesn't make a difference?
Well, I do feel there's a lot less pressure than when I first started the course. When I was proving myself, you know. Now, whoever I work for, pretty much they know, you know, they know my work, they know what I can do. So I don't feel the pressure to have to really wow somebody in an audition, you know. Yeah, it's auditioning is a weird process. Now, I think I've forgotten again the main part of your question was. This happens when you get older. Strangely enough, it happens more and more.
Well, at least you still have enough to do the job and do the job well.
Yes. As long as it's written out for me.
You have you are the voice of Lionel. I mean, pretty much that is you. When you're walking around, people are like, "Oh my God, you're Lionel." Does that ever happen?
Oh yeah, sure. Not so much lately, but Lionel's voice is basically just my voice. It's not a quote cartoon character voice. We were all told, those of us who were, as I told you, we were each actor played one Thundercat and one mutant, and then lots of voices beyond that. But the Thundercats' voices, if you think about it, they're not like cartoony, strange, disembodied voices. They sound like real people. So when I'm saying Lionel, for example, sounds just like this, not quite as raspy. But when I'm talking to you here, I would say something like, "Sword of omens, come to my hand. I Lionel command it." On TV, it comes out, "Sword of omens, come to my hand. I Lionel command it." A little more dramatic. So, but sometimes people would say, "You sound familiar. You sound like Lionel." Every once in a while I'd say, "Yeah, that's me." "Get out of here." You're not. So, okay, I'm not.
Let's switch a little technical stuff. So nowadays, as you said, a lot of people do recording on their own. Do you have your own little in-studio thing, or is that you always go into the offices to do your recording?
No, I do not have a studio in my home. Not yet. I may have to, especially now when we go back to work, like everybody else in this world. We're going to have to do it a different way, you know. And one of those ways, I think, is going to be more of us working from home. Now, a lot of guys and a lot of actors already have a studio in their home. I don't. This is my studio right here. I have a real good microphone, see? and I have a good computer with a thing called GarageBand on it, so I can record auditions. So I don't have to go into New York for every audition. I can send them right to my agent's office, and then they edit them and send them to the audition, to the advertising people. But I like being in the studio. I like, as I told you earlier, I like being with other actors. And for me, just to sit here by myself and create and then send it off, it's not that much fun to me. I do it, but.
So we have another question from the chat. It's from Fusion. He says, how do voiceover actors feel about TV or radio actors getting voiceover work versus unknowns getting the job?
Yeah. Well, we're used to it now. I remember about 20 years ago, maybe more than that, when that first started happening. That being what you said, that you'd go to a Disney movie and now all of a sudden the voices are of big stars. I mean, the biggest stars do cartoon shows now and commercials. That was not the case until about 20 years ago. As a matter of fact, when big stars back 30 years ago, let's say, well, let me give you an example. Frank Sinatra made millions of dollars doing commercials for, I think it was Chrysler or maybe Lincoln cars, but they could only be shown in Japan, because back then Japan was so isolated. We didn't know what was going on there. Nobody watched Japanese TV here, But he would not allow them to be shown anywhere else because the big stars didn't want people to think they needed the money. If he's doing commercials, he must be hard up for money. That's not the case anymore. You make a lot of money on commercials now.
Oh, wow. So you've also moved on to video games.
Mm-hmm.
Is it different doing commercials to cartoons to video games? What's the difference between the three?
Well, the main difference is comes when you're doing a video game where you have to do motion capture, mocap they call it.
You wear the ball suit?
Yes, yeah, you wear that suit. Yeah. I've only done it for one character for one video game, Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm a character called J.B. Cripps, who's this old codger, who doesn't like anybody. Says things like, well, she claimed to be royal, but she had a head the size of a pumpkin. That's the only line I remember. But for that show, you go in and early in the morning, they put this suit on you, spandex suit. It has these little white balls all over it. Those are computer matchup points. It's a long process to describe, but it's a lot of fun.
So, all right, I have to ask, how comfortable is the suit?
The suit, it's not bad. I'll tell you what's uncomfortable is the helmet. You have to wear a helmet that has a pipe coming up like this, out like this, and down in front of you. And there's a microphone and a light and a camera right in your face as you're acting. And you're out on the stage, by the way. This is not in a booth just doing the voice. All the movement that you see from my character, that was actually me moving. That's my body they're using.
Wow.
Just the animated face or the drawn in face or whatever. So it's very interesting procedure.
Have you played the game?
No, I haven't. No. I think my son has. I don't think I've actually played any of the video games I've been on. I was on Grand Theft Auto 4. I was on Mafia 2. Several of them. But those were just me in the studio recording. I was playing the part of a guy on the radio or something like that. This was the first one where I got to do all of the equipment stuff.
So you're ready to be so basically you're not like a superhero. You're your very own superhero. You have the spandex, you have the voice. What's the next step?
Who knows? Who knows? I can't wait though. It better be soon.
Well,
it was a bit hard for me at my age, climbing around on that set. I had to jump up on a horse, which was really just a barrel with like a mop head for a tail and all that. But that's how they record that. They just the set, if you will, the scenery is all just like sticks and again, it's hard to explain.
So
do all the rest of
basically,
it.
it's like a jungle gym or something that you're playing imagination with, right?
Some of it is, yeah. For example, the very first thing my first scene was I was supposed to be standing in the camp at a big cauldron and making soup for the gang for dinner, you know. So I go over there and I say, well, where's the big cauldron? I said, it's right over there. There's not one really there. You just take this stick and stand there and stir it. But as I'm doing it, now there are cameras, thousands of cameras literally all over the place, and monitors. So as I'm doing that, I can look up and there's a guy up there moving exactly like I am. He's got a costume on, the cauldron is there, the ladle is, the horse is there. How they do that?
So we have another question in the chat. It says, have you been fortunate to wear any of the costumes or clothes in anything your voice acted in? So basically, have you dressed up as Lionel, like at Halloween or Count Chocula?
A little cosplay?
Yes.
No, I haven't. I don't think so. No.
Is it weird seeing people come up to you dressed as you?
No, it's fantastic because they're not dressing up like me. They're dressing up like Lionel. I'd be a little suspicious if they're dressing up like me, but I think it's fantastic. You see all these people, whole families, you know, will come, 3 generations will come sometime all of them in costume. And I just think it's the greatest thing in the world. I love watching those people have fun.
When did you start going to conventions and starting to show yourself as you being the voices of all these different characters?
Well, I think about 15 years ago was my first one. I was late getting to it. I hadn't even heard about them. And my son one day, at the time he was about 18, and he said, Dad, you should start going to these Comic-Cons, which he explained to me. Well, he told me what they were all about. And I hadn't heard about it. And I said, well, I don't know. I'll try it. You know, I'll go and see. The main thing I was concerned about was for 30, 40 years now, if somebody writes to me and asks for an autographed picture, I send it to them. I print the pictures myself. I pay the postage. I never charge anybody postage or anything like that, or for the sign for the autograph. And I had never in my life charged for an autograph. You know, that's just always, in the old days, that was just a nice thing to do for people because, you know, they're fans. So I said, Tanner, I'm not going to go there and ask people to give me $25, $30 just for my autograph. It's not right. And he explained to me, he said, Dad, the people who are coming to these things are coming there for that very purpose. They want to meet people like you, and there will be a lot of them there. They'll never get a chance to meet them again in their life. And they'd like to have a memento, and they're willing to pay you that money for them. I said, okay, well, I'll try it, you know. And the first 2 I went to, I forced him to go with me because I made him take the money from the people. I didn't want to take, I couldn't do it. I kept, and to this day, sometimes he'll go with me and he'll catch me. Like a family will come up and they've got like 3 or 4 kids and they really don't have much money. They want me to sign a picture for all of them together, you know. And I said, no, here's one for you, one for you, one for you. And then I just charge them the basic one for one, you know. My son will sit over there and go,
You get that look, Dad.
Dad, what are you doing? I'm going to inherit that money.
We have another question in the chat.
Yeah.
What do you need to do to preserve your voice? Are there any tricks you learned along the way to keep your voice healthy?
Obviously not. No, you know, it's funny. Actors have different ways of taking care of their voice or whatever. I never really ever had to. I mean, I rarely got a sore throat or a cold until I got old. But the only thing I do is if I get up and in the morning, I've got a couple of recording sessions or something, and I feel a little bit scratchy, I'll drink some hot tea with honey and lemon, and then at the studio I'll have have some of that there for me too, and that'll get me through it. But I don't really ever have any problems, you know, losing my voice.
Have you ever traveled to different countries and talked to people at other conventions like that, or you only been in the United States?
I have not yet traveled. I was scheduled to go to Wales 2 or 3 years ago, and I was looking forward to that. But that ended up not having the convention for whatever reason. And I keep getting offers from the UK and Europe. And I guess I'm going to have to go over there and do it. I don't know. I just, I'm stubborn. That's a whole new thing. I don't know if I can do it. My wife would say, honey, you can do it. You can do it.
And shout out to your wife. She is such a lovely lady. I met her at the CradleCon last year. Very nice lady. Yeah.
On Long Island. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you. She is a lovely woman. The lovely Carol, I call her.
So she's the reason you got into voice acting. She was it. You got the girl.
No. No, I didn't meet her until we've only been married only 38 years.
Wow.
So the reason I say only is I was married a long time before that too.
Okay. So do you ever look at a part and you say, you know what, this really isn't for me? Somebody else I know, because you did say the community is kind of small. So like, yeah. Frank might be a better role for this voice. Or is it always, I want to do it, let me do it all the time?
Well, most of us in the business, I found the people in our business are good, really great people and very sharing. The one thing about people in show business, whether they're stage actors or whatever, most of them, they know how hard it was for them to get where they are. And they know what it takes to do the job, and how that there are some ups and downs, And so we're very sharing with each other. And I can't give you a specific product or anything like that, but I know there have been a couple of times when I was in an audition and I would say, because I know what I can do, and I know what I can't do that well, as far as I'm concerned. Somebody, the producer might think that's good, but I know it's not that good. But I'll tell you what, I know. Chris Murney is great at this. I've heard him do it, so call him. And he's done the same thing for me. Other people have done the same thing too.
So when you look at because they usually, when you go to audition for cartoons anyway, they show you a picture of what the character is supposed to look like. Yeah. So how do you decide this is what this guy sounds like? Well,
they'll give you, for example, the Thundercats audition. When you get there, the walls are all lined with illustrations of the characters, the synopsis of what they're like. One paragraph thing. He's the leader of the Thundercats. His father was Claudius and this and that. Pardon me. They give you a little bit about let you know a little bit about the characters. And as far as coming up with a voice, it all depends. Sometimes they'll say, "No, here's exactly what we want. We want this guy to be an old curmudgeon," something like that. Sometimes they'll say, "What do you think? What do you think kind of voice should it have?" And again, as I told you, with Lionel, that character was just my voice. I just had to be more dramatic about it.
Do you find it to be more fortuitous to use your own voice in voicing, or do you prefer to just do some wacky different voices?
Good question. It's always fun to do a crazy, wacky character. Any actor will tell you, whether it's film or stage or cartoon shows, the most fun is to be a villain. Actors love to play villains because you can chew the scenery. It's something we call overacting. You can be so broad, ancient spirits of evil, Mumra, So the only one I got to play in a long series was Jackalman. And I always was glad to see his name coming up in the script because I started going, okay, how nasty can I be this time?
You do, before we started recording, you did an amazing Paul Lynde impression. What is your best impression that you have in your repertoire?
Oh, I don't know. There's so many. So many of them, You mean the impressions of people? Well, I was on the Imus in the Morning show, radio and TV for 35 years. And my job on there was to do impressions of people like Richard Nixon, I'm not a crook. I may look like a crook. I may do things a crook does, but I am I am not a crook. Or did Teddy Kennedy for years, you know. Yes, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Oh, excuse me. Let's change that to something else. So my favorites to do, I always like doing George Patton, who portrayed by George C. Scott in the movie. How'd that go? I forget. It's been so long now. Well, we did him the way George C. Scott did him in the movie. You've all seen Patton in the movie. He would talk like this, you know, you people are Americans, and Americans like to kill other people. Now get out there and kill them. That is all. But in reality, my father was in Patton's tank corps. My father drove a tank in World War II.
Wow.
And he was in Patton's unit at the Battle of the Bulge and the Bridge of Remagen. And he said, and I've heard this verified since then, that Patton had a little squeaky high voice and he stuttered. My dad said he really sounded like,
All right, men. Now we're going out there and kill these Germans.
not quite like that, but he didn't sound like George C. Scott. But I don't think it wouldn't have been that effective if I had done it that way.
Have you ever met anybody you did an impression of?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, being on the Imus show, you know, we always had celebrities on the show every day. Some of them that I had done. Who am I thinking of now? Oh, Walter Cronkite.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, he was sitting right next to me one day, and he had written a book about his life, and the book started out. The first line in the book was, "I am the son of a dentist." First line in the book. So Imus's first question, he asks him, "Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Walter Cronkite." Walter's got a new book out. So Walter, how are your teeth? And Walter Cronkite says, "My feet." He looks at me and says, "What does he mean? How are my feet?" I said, "No, I think he means teeth. I think he said teeth, Walter, because your book is." "Oh, yeah, well, my teeth are just fine. Thank you." My feet.
All right, we have another question in the chat. What changes have you seen through the years, from tech-wise to when you started, and have the newer ways simplified the job?
Technology?
Technology-wise, and is it easier now to do voice acting than it was back then, or is it pretty much the same in your mind?
I can't think it would be any easier. I mean, it's still the same. You still have to perform. You still have to provide whatever it takes, you know. They come up with new microphones, but frankly, I haven't seen any improvement in microphones for, you know, a long time. Technology has changed our business in different ways and how you get the product to them. You know, now you can do it online. You can send, like I said, send an audition to your agent online. You don't have to go in there. But in terms of being an actor, an actor is an actor, whether you have a microphone in front of you or some newfangled, well, just like in the Red Dead Redemption 2 thing. Here I was in this suit with the buttons all over me and a helmet and camera right in my face, and then you still have to act. You know, that stuff is not going to do the acting for you. It's just going to capture it a different way.
That's actually something I always want to mention about voice acting. I've asked many voice actors this question. So how much of voice acting is acting and how much is the voice?
It's hard to pin down number-wise, but it's a good question because it's not just your voice. There are people who have wonderful voices. You know, people are probably saying all the time, you should be in radio, you should do commercials, you got a great voice. And that may be true, they have a great voice, but it takes more than that. It takes acting. And sometimes acting with your voice is even harder than acting on camera, because you can't use facial expressions, you can't use body language, things like that. It all has to come to somebody's ear, and you have to make them realize and understand by what they hear what you mean and how you mean it, how mad you are, how this and that, you know. So that for me is the biggest difference in voice acting.
All right, so we're almost out of time, so we gotta get through the important stuff. Where can people contact you, hire you, social media, all that fun stuff? Do you have any of that stuff? Websites?
Yes. You're scaring me. Don't go so fast. Yes. Well, my agent, who has been my agent for over 45 years, is Don Buchwald and Associates in New York City. You give them a call and tell them you want to use me for something, and they'll hook me up. And I'm on Facebook. Larry Kenney. Now, there are several Larry Kenneys, and people always ask me, which one are you? I'm the one that has a picture of him with all the characters around, Lionel and Jackalman and all those. That's the one that's me. I'm also on Instagram, but I don't really know how to use that yet. I haven't figured that out. I know that sounds crazy, but.
So when you were doing, you did Thundercats, Silverhawks, and Thundersharks. Was it all at the same time, or were they done in succession?
No, in succession. Thundercats first in '85. And then before we were actually even finished recording the last 20 or so Thundercats out of 130, we started doing the next one, which was Silverhawks. And then after we recorded, I think 130 of those, we did Tiger Sharks. And then we did a Saturday morning show called Comic Strip on ABC. And it was 4 shows, 4 15-minute shows in 2 hours. Karate Cat, Mini Monsters, I don't know if you guys remember those. Karate Cat and something else.
So out of the 3 main ones, because those are the ones that people remember. Because I gotta tell you, I do not remember the last one. Which was your favorite? Like, which one you're like, oh, this is great. I love doing this. I want to keep on doing this forever. Or is it like, you know what? It's a job. Let's move it on. Which was your favorite one?
Well, Thundercats is my favorite one. Probably subconsciously is because that's the one that's really I'm known for. You know, the biggest hit of all of them. But I like Silverhawks as a show too. I think it was really done well. And but I think Thundercats is probably the favorite animated show that I've done.
So with Silverhawks, the Copper Kid, was that actual person speaking and with that sound voice effect?
No, I believe it. I believe they had just invented those things that can make on the keyboard.
The synthesizers.
Synthesizer. Thank you. Yeah. And I remember I remember the first time I saw one of those. I was in Nashville for a convention, and there was this enormous room where they had. Everybody was talking about, you have to go see it. It's something incredibly new in the business. And this was a music convention, music convention in Nashville. And they were just showing the world the synthesizer. And all these musicians, these Nashville musicians, we're the greatest in the world, were standing around this thing looking at each other like, oh my God. Because they knew it was going to replace them. It had, pretty much, yeah. They said, listen to this. They would play something that sounds like a piano, and then they would press the same keys and make it sound like a trombone, and then voices. And we all kind of went, okay, well, better make sure I got a pension.
We have another question from the chat. Let's see. It's a rare job where there's no ageism in voice acting. It's a job you can do much older ages more easily. Is it a true blessing? Don't you agree?
I think so. Yeah, sure. I mean, people ask me all the time if I'm going to retire. And I say, look, I'm going to keep talking anyway. I might as well get paid for it. There's no heavy lifting. It's not like I'm going out and busting my butt for 8 hours, breaking up rocks or something. And it's something I enjoy doing. So they're going to have to drag me out of there.
I know there's a whole lot of NDAs that happen in the business. Is there any new projects you can talk about that are upcoming that you're in without getting into any kind of trouble?
No, I don't have anything on the immediate horizon. As you probably know, in this business, we work at a very short notice. Like I can't tell you right now what I'll be doing a month from now, even, because that hasn't been assigned and it hasn't been auditioned for yet. That's how close to the actual production it is with the auditions. So once you get a job, then you start working within a week or so, and you wrap it up, and you get another job. So I don't really have any new projects coming up right now that I can tell you about. I'm still doing, after about 20 years, I'm still doing the Skittles commercials. The ones where at the end, the guy says, feel the rainbow, taste the rainbow. That's me too.
When you do a catchphrase like that, don't they just rerun the same thing, or you have to go in each and every time?
You would think so, wouldn't you? But no, they want me every time. Every time it's only one new word. At the end of the commercial, the original one was feel the rainbow, taste the rainbow. Then it became discover the rainbow, taste the rainbow. There's always something the rainbow, taste the rainbow. So one day I said, why don't we, you know what? Why don't you guys book me for a whole day, maybe 2 days, whatever. I come in, we record every verb in the English language. They said no. And on Thundercats, people have asked me too, did you have to do that yell every time, or did they just record a good one and use that? No, I had to do it every time. Even sometimes it was in the same show 4 or 5 times, because they want the exact same ambiance that's in the room that day. It's room sound and everything as it was the time you recorded the rest of them. So, you know, I did a lot of Thundercats. Oh! I would see another one coming up on the next page and go, oh, geez. No, I never got tired of saying that.
We have another question from the chat. It is from Kelly. He says, He-Man versus Lionel. Who would win?
Oh, what's this clown's name?
Kelly Gordon.
Oh, Kelly Gordon. Kelly, I'm surprised you even bothered to ask that. I wouldn't even, Lionel wouldn't even fight He-Man. I mean, it would be like, you know, a big guy picking on a little kid. It just wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be. So there, Kelly.
Going back to the synthesizer, we have another question from the chat that says, what do you think of auto-tune for singers as someone who worked or had to work on the sound in your voice?
Well, it's hard to say. It's been around long enough now that, you know, I'm not surprised by it, but it just still don't seem right to me, you know. I mean, if you're a singer, sing the song. And if you can hit the notes, fine. If you can't hit the notes, then let somebody else sing the song. But it's kind of cheating, don't you think, with those, what do they call them?
Auto-tune, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not illegal or anything, but I don't like it.
All right, so we have less than 3 minutes to go. So we're going to do a final thought. So do you have any final thoughts, any words of wisdom, any inspiring words you want to give out right now? This is your platform to say whatever you like.
Well, first of all, you know, you don't ask a guy my age, what are your final thoughts? What? You know something I don't know? I will tell you, knowing full well that I'll have a lot more thoughts in my life, I just want to seriously say to everybody that's tuned in to watch this thing, thank you so much. I'm assuming you probably were fans of Thundercats or Silverhawks or Imus in the Morning and stuff like that. My radio show, I did a TV show, Bowling for Dollars in New York for 3 years. So I have fans in different categories, you know, and I just love them all, because if there weren't fans, if people didn't like you and like what you do, where would you do it? Who would pay you to do it? You know what I mean? If it weren't for Thundercats and these other things, you wouldn't call me and say, hey, you want to do a Zoom thing with us? I'd just be, you know, I would do it, but I wonder why they want me on there. But I want to thank everybody for watching Thundercats and all those other things. And I love you. Thank you.
Wow, that's a great way to end the panel. We want to thank you for being such an awesome guy. You tell amazing stories. Meeting you in person, like I said, I met you last year. You were such a great person to meet in person, and having you here is a privilege for us, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Kelly, very much, and same to you. It's too bad you couldn't be here.
I'll come by your house tomorrow.
Yeah, come on over. Come on over.
All right, so that is it for our Q&A panel for the EMCON. Make sure you guys follow and like us. Also, make sure you go check out the East Meadow Public Library. They have plenty of different programs each and every single day. That's eastmeadow.info. And make sure you listen to my show. It came from the radio. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you so much. And anything else you guys want to add? Jude, Kelly, now's your chance.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for hanging out this evening. Larry, it was a blast, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I had a lot of fun, too.